Welcome back, everyone. 8 out of 10 Canadian restaurants have been either losing money or barely scraping by as a result of the pandemic. This forced a lot of hospitality workers to leave their jobs while exposing the terrible working conditions so often tied to the restaurant industry.
From low wages to long hours, our next guest says it's time to hit reset on the restaurant industry. He lays it all out in his new book, The Next Supper, The End of Restaurants as We Knew Them and What Comes After. We are thrilled and delighted to have food reporter and author Corey Mintz on the show today. Welcome, Corey.
Hi, Jess. Hi, Lainey.
Hi, what a great job you have.
Yeah.
Food reporter.
And he's so good at it, too. Listen, Corey, you start this book at the beginning of the pandemic on what you call the day restaurants died. And that was back in March of 2020. Since that day, do you see the restaurant industry story as one of loss or opportunity?
Well, it's both. I mean, obviously, there's a tremendous loss we can all see, as you mentioned, the number of businesses that have closed. And even more important is, of those businesses, 2/3 of them are independent restaurants, you know, the kind of restaurants we want in our community. With all due respect to that, I don't know, one person out there starting a Facebook group to try to save their neighborhood Applebee's. Mostly, these are the neighborhood restaurants that we want, to say nothing of the loss of jobs, the disruption to people's lives and careers. But at the same time, you know, looking for an opportunity in a crisis, it's also an opportunity to reset a bit, to sort of clear the browser history of what came before, both with the, you know, the way that people were treated in restaurants, the hierarchical structure, the compensation method, and also for us as diners to sort of reset our relationship with restaurants, as we see, as I hear from people saying, I still love restaurants. I want to go to restaurants. I just want to know that when I go out, I'm supporting a business that shares some of my values. And that's part of what I've been trying to do with this book over the last 2 years.
So one of the hottest debates lately has been this shift towards no tipping. We just talked about it the other day on our show. On the one hand, it offers more stability and security for hospitality workers, and yet on the other hand, it actually caps or can put a cap on their earning potential. So after speaking to so many people who work in the industry about this, what do the workers actually want?
Well, there's no consensus on what workers want. The great news for people who don't like tips is that despite, you know, how often I write about tips or talk about tips, and I hear from particularly American audiences that, you know, don't you come for my tips, there is currently no legislation in Canada or the U.S. that's trying to take out your right to reward or punish staff through tipping. The problem with the model, of course, is engenders all kinds of pay disparity from front of house to back of house, abuse and harassment to servers. What I'm hearing that's kind of inspiring right now is, you know, between the sort of far goalposts of total abolition or the old system, there's a common ground in the middle where, you know, when I used to ask people, how do you compensate staff, I'd hear maybe $15 an hour for cooks. And my front of house staff, they kick back maybe 5% to the back of house. And now when I ask people, I'm hearing 70-30, 60-40, sometimes even 50-50. So part of the result of the pandemic is causing people to reevaluate the way they not just compensate, but the way they share the resources and the wages they have. And that's a sign for hope.
Yeah, it's a really positive thing. And as consumers, you say one of the easiest and most important ways that we can contribute to better dining culture is by abandoning the idea that the customer is always right. I love this. Explain it. What makes it so urgent?
Well, I tried to explore in the book all these different ideas and all these different models, and I tried to have sort of advice for what can you do as a diner. And sometimes it's complicated. Sometimes it requires work. But I wanted to include stuff that doesn't cost you anything. So forget about the customer is always right. You know, imagine that you're an electrician. You come to my home. I got sparks coming out of the ceiling, and you tell me, here's what I'm going to do, and here's what it's going to cost to fix it. And I say, well, why don't you also roast me a duck and also switch out all the lights in all the house, and also I'm going to sexually harass you while I'm at it, because the customer is always right. I'm always told this. Your boss is always telling you that. That's terrible. That puts you in a position where your default is to say, well, before I ask questions about my personal safety, the profit margin of my restaurant, the comfort of other customers, I'm just going to default to you being right, which is terrible. It's toxic. So I think if you want to do one thing right off the bat, don't read the book, just think about that. What does that mean to your life, the idea that the customer is always right?
I love that. It's something that I think a lot of people might have a hard time.
I know, but I
getting
think
to, of a certain generation.
Yes.
One success story from the pandemic has been third-party food delivery apps. And you talk about how these apps are like actually a bad deal for restaurant owners since they take a huge cut from their profits. But I guilty, like I have ordered so much. So it's hard for consumers to have develop this habit and then to cut it off because it's kind of convenient on a Friday night to just go on your phone and get the burger. So how can we not contribute to the demise of restaurants, but also maybe maintain this lifestyle a little bit? Or do we just have to suck it up and just suffer?
You can have it all, Lainey. This one is a little harder than the previous one, but it's still not that much work. I've written extensively about this, and before the pandemic, again, this was like a conspiracy theory. What are you talking about? Uber Eats isn't good for restaurants. Of course it is. This conversation seems to have bubbled up. For people looking to say, yeah, but what do? I got used to ordering. I don't have any phones on my apps. I tell people to delete them, but I understand. We can't put the genie back in the bottle. We love and we crave the convenience. The great news, if you live in a big city, for example, you're in Toronto there. Toronto, there's a fantastic browser-based ordering platform called Ambassador. It was founded by a restaurant owner, Nav Sangha, and they charge a flat fee to the restaurants involved. And they have a separate deal with DoorDash for the last mile delivery, which is also a flat fee. So go on their platform. You'll find a bunch of really great restaurants that are doing their business. And at the same time, remember, at the Friday night, you're tired and you go, I want to order on the app. Remember, before you decide, maybe I just want to go on this app, they sell us the fantasy that we want to order and we can order from 1,000 different restaurants tonight. The reality is, you and I know we all order from the same 5 or 6 restaurants on repeat. So that burger place that might be down the road, call it in, go pick it up. It won't be the end of the world.
Can I just go back and check? Is it the app is Ambassadors?
Ambassador is the name of the platform. I'm not sure if they have an app version or if it's simply browser-based, but a number of Toronto restaurants. If you look it up, I'm sure the website will inform you whether or not they have an app.
She's good with the internet, so I think she'll be fine. Now, another trend we saw increase big time during the pandemic was the ghost kitchen. Restaurants that only exist online and prepare delivery-only meals. So who wins and who loses from the growing popularity of these virtual restaurants?
The people that I speak with, and I say here, restaurateurs who have experimented with this model, the winners are successful restaurateurs who already have, for example, a 5-unit mini chain, right? And they're looking to say, I want a 6th location to access delivery in this neighborhood. So in Toronto or New York, instead of spending $1 million or $2 million to build a new restaurant, I can spend $80,000 for the build out of a virtual or a ghost kitchen, sign a 1-year lease instead of a 5 or 10-year lease. Much lower risk for gaining access for delivery into some affluent neighborhood that they didn't previously have access. It's not great for first-time operators who will not be able to stand out in the virtual marketplace. And ultimately, I'm concerned about what it is down the road. We judge all these companies for the way they operate now, but that's a huge mistake. We have to learn our lesson from Amazon and Google. Wouldn't it be amazing if we could consider legislatively those companies back in 2005 with the way that we view them now? Let's not make that mistake with companies determined to change with their business model at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, and we're going to kind of stay on this theme because the next time we're choosing a place to eat, you say we shouldn't focus on what's new or what everyone is talking about. I'm guilty of this. Everybody wants a table. It's so hard to get. And then, of course, I want to get a table there. So since we all play a role in creating buzz around the restaurant industry, and we all can play a role in making the restaurant industry less toxic, what's a better approach to choosing where we eat?
Okay, another one, and here's a free tip, Lainey. That list that you have, that we all have, the restaurant list, the places we're trying to try out. Remember the last time you read an article or heard a radio story about a restaurant that did away with tipping, is paying staff better, whatever the issue is? Take that restaurant and put that at the top of your list. Go there next, and then when you go there, ask the owner, where do you eat? Who do you think is a reputable operator?
Oh my God, I love that so much, and we're definitely going to be doing it. Hey, it's been so great talking with you today, Corey. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. My daughter says bye too.
Bye. The book is called The Next Supper, and you can find it everywhere right now. Be sure to pick up a copy, and be sure to come right back after this break.